Hello, welcome back. My name is Daniel Gormali. Welcome back to my channel. Today I want to show off a game by somebody who I made a shout out on social media, and I basically said, does anyone want to show me their game? So I'm going to just move this around a little bit. And somebody called Arjun was one of the people sent in some of their games. So Arjun, thank you for that. Arjun Pyda, Pyda. He's English, and same name as Arjun Eragatsu, who's in the top 5, I think, in the world. But obviously, it's a tough level to aim to. But this guy is also called Arjun, and his rating is 1852. Blitz is also quite good. Rapid play are similar. So we're going to have a look at his games. So these are from the Coventry Open. So let's have a look at what I tend to do a lot with students anyway. The few students I have, I don't have many students. It's a very competitive world, the whole chess coaching industry. By the way, I'll link my email address in the description so that if you need any coaching, let me know or contact me. Or if you want me to go through your games on the channel, by all means, and critique your annotations or critique your games, then let me know. So let's have a look. So this is some kind of, he's white, Arjun's white, and he plays panel attack, yeah. It's my go-to weapon against this opening. So everything good so far. But slight mistake in it, it should say, but now. It says, but no, I know the antidote. It's fine. The theory is bishop g5. So he plays bishop g5, yeah. D5, knight e5. I don't know much about this line, I must admit. Yeah, so he gives this line, bishop takes queen a4. According to the engine, it's equal, but practically speaking, white is more active. So it should be slightly better for white. So I like the fact he's giving annotations. He's also mentioning that, practically speaking, yeah, but I think you shouldn't really alter from the engine's evaluation this early. That's the only thing I would say. If the engine says equal, then yeah, you need to think about the truth in these openings and not say, well, I wouldn't give it slightly better if the engine, maybe you shouldn't check the engine evaluation at all. But anyway, he's giving it slightly better. Yeah, so what happens is you're forking the king and you're going to win back the knight. So after bishop d7 we take. Not sure what move black plays here. Maybe a move like queen b6 is possible. But yeah, it is tricky for black because how do you get the pieces out? You could potentially go g6. e6 looks like you're opening up the position for white. So not easy. Knight e5 was played instead. And then we get this line, which does look slightly better for white. Or easier to play for white. Getting 2 birds with 1 stone. Exactly. The idea is to prevent... What I would say with the annotations though is I prefer variations. I think the less text you do, the text should be a bonus to the variations. It should really all be about the variations. Rather than too much text. I feel like with amateur players they generalise too much, so the more concrete you can be and more about giving variations and not generalising, the better. Rook HE1, activate the last piece in the game, into the game I would have said, but that's fine. Rook C8. So he said he was worried about this move, rook e5, but he doesn't give a, again I'm being very harsh here, but I would say Arjun, he doesn't give an evaluation, he just gives the move. So it's very hard to know, as somebody reading his annotations doesn't know, so I would try to also give more variation after rook e5. And then I would mention what the evaluation is, and try to do your own evaluations. Don't do it with the engine. But probably he saw that move himself in the game. But rook e5, queen b6, maybe saving the queen. But then I guess there's moves, right? I haven't got a clue what. Obviously, for black, the problem is you can't develop the bishop, like you mentioned earlier. But I'm not sure what white plays here. I'll be honest. I mean, there are moves like 94, bishop f6 runs into take, so that can't be right. Knight b5 is also a move, actually. Knight b5 might be the solution because you're battling this. So that might be a good move. Yeah, that's probably the correct answer, but why not give that in your annotations? So again, I'm just being quite harsh. King b1. The opponent's desperate for any one counterplay, obviously. Don't blame him. b4, calculated the consequences of this before I play b4. Bishop takes. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, white's doing very well indeed in this position, I would imagine. You're pawned up and the black king is in the centre, that's not good. So his opponent played rook c3, rook d5. So I'd say the annotations could be slightly improved upon. I'd like to see more variations. Overall the game was very good, it was good preparation. Again, you can also do this, you can be a bit sneaky and say, what does the engine think about this whole... How accurate was that game by white? My guess it was sort of 97% or something like that. I'd always guess 97%. 98% maybe. It seemed like a very accurate game by white, and also a very short game, so it should have a high accuracy score. Black would have been quite low, maybe like mid 80s, maybe low 80s. Right, let's have a look. No, it's actually not as high as I thought. The game in terms of accuracy, they're saying 87% accuracy, nowhere near as high as I thought. So where were the mistakes and where could black have improved? So all this is kind of normalish and still theory actually. So Arjun mentioned this line and said that white was slightly better. However, the engine definitely does not agree. It says that black's at least equal. So I think that, yeah, I'd say, you know, try to think about what the truth of the position is in the opening, rather than say, well, it's practically better for white. It doesn't mean, it's not going to console you very much if it's practically better for white if you end up in a bad position as white. So yeah, this is a very sharp position actually, and you can get a variation like this. If white castles queenside, that's probably not a good move at all. Yeah, knight d5, because the problem is there's a rook c8. And if you take, I take with a bishop. Got a good position actually, to be honest. So I would say that annotation was wrong, but yeah, you know, in a kind of understandable way. You try to do the right thing. Try to talk about whether the game was practically better for white or not. E6, yeah, that was a mistake by black. You should have got developed with G6. And sometimes you just got to get the pieces out and get on with the game. E6, you've got to be very careful when you open up the game like that. So it worked out, the other variation worked out, but slightly different now, and that makes all the difference. And then bishop d7. D6 was a mistake. Apparently you should just develop. Yeah, development is the key, and that was a mistake because it does give black some chances to survive. And then it mentions that b5 was a big mistake. b5 was a mistake. Apparently knight e5 was better. Rook e1 does look very natural. I quite like rook e1. Even though it's a mistake, I think that's a good mistake. So one line you can do is this, and then allow this check and then go to d8. It looks pretty bad. So even though a computer gives it a mistake, I don't think it is really from a human level. You know, it's just a good move. So I don't give that as a mistake. Let's look at the next game. Right, we'll turn it. Okay, let's see what the annotations say. Get rid of the that. So Arjun was black in this game against. Is that CONT or is it like, you know, maybe that's just the name, right? I thought there was a continuation of that name, but yeah. So I would say that, yeah, here this is all normal. C4. I think take it is actually quite a good line as well. If you want a dynamic game, taking. So he gives this. I like the fact that he gives this line e4. More familiar with these positions, so practically my best option. One of the sample lines that can happen in the game. Yeah, and he gives like an annotation here, unclear. Yeah, this is all theory. This is all known theory. You can also play in these lines. You can also go here actually. This is another way to play. After e4, there's lots of moves here. Well, c6 is probably the main line, or a6. But anyway, after c4, I think maybe the most dynamic possibility is to play like this, and then go c5, or even play knight c6 is another option, and go put the bishop on e6. But c6 is also a main line. So after knight c3, I think black maybe should just take, because normally I thought they normally take, right? And then they go knight e5. And then you get this kind of setup, which is very, very tough to break. It's very, very tough to break down black's position. But in the game he went knight c3. Now, as black here, I would be very tempted to just take the pawn. Playable, yeah, so it says playable but practically awful. If you think it's practically awful, I'd give that a question mark. Give as many question marks. I like the fact, give that a question mark. You know, give in your annotations, try and bring your annotations alive. Try to give some personality to the annotations. So I might give it a question mark, you know. Well, not a brilliant move. Or dubious, maybe. If you think it was dubious. Obviously, objectively, it might not be a bad move. Yeah, but D takes c4, and then I'd give that as an exclamation mark. b3. So we get this position. Okay, a6. I mean, was b6 possible? Was that another? Maybe that was another move that black could have played. And just developed a bit. I mean, how would a game? You know, maybe how would a game have really gone if that would have happened? The idea is you know, okay, you can also go e4 immediately, and then black has the option of either holding in the centre. Probably you don't hold in the centre because of e5, because the rook, sometimes you can hold in the centre, but the knight needs square on e8 to go back to. The probably you would take, but then actually this is a bit tricky now because you've got e6, because knight e6 already some kind of strategic threat. And if you do stuff like this, I'm not sure you're going to get your c. It's all these positions tend to revolve around where black can get the c5 breaking. If black can get the c5 breaking, black's normally doing okay. However, they can't. If white is able to prevent that, position could often be quite awkward for black. So a6 looks a bit slow to me, but I'm not sure what else black could have played. So maybe b6. So a6, bishop f4. Starting calculate, well, it should have said started calculating c5, and found interesting on it, gave black some chances. Obviously I criticise his grammar, but my grammar is very bad actually as well, so you know, I can't criticise, sorry. It's just my teacher type instincts kicking in. Actually both my parents were school teachers, by the way. What was this tournament? It was this Coventry, was it? Coventry was bombed during the Second World War. I'm going to Coventry, or somewhere near there, fairly soon. Going to Daventry, which is in Northampton. It's not a million miles away from Coventry. One of the nearest towns is Rugby, which is probably so when you get the train, I'm not getting the train all the way down. I'm getting a train to York and then get a lift. So b5, c5, yeah. A little bit cramped this position. It's hard to play, right? There's various options here for black. You could move the knight to h5. Nothing seems that great. Maybe knight g4 is an option with the idea of e5. I mean, that's the move that I would consider. But maybe white just simply goes e4, because after this, maybe you can just take, right? So possibly that doesn't work out. Bishop f4 is played, and then bishop g5. Yeah, so black's forcing the issue. where it's somewhat underdeveloped, which is not what you want. You really want the queen side developed first before you start forcing your issue in the centre, right? It said bad out of d4, so I didn't want a knight on d6. I stopped calculating, stop visualising after this. Yeah, always carry on with your variations. Knight e4, yeah. Arjun gives this variation: knight e6, rook f8, b4, and he says this is clearly better for white. Looks horrible for black, right? Well, I would go further and say that black has lost, because I work with engines quite a lot, and I know now they tend to be very kind of... One of the ways that I think that amateur players can improve on their annotations is be more self-confident. If you think the position's horrible, you should just give it as winning for white, rather than clearly better. Clearly better is certainly better than slightly better, or equal, but, you know, go with your gut feeling. Another candidate move I considered. So it's good that he's looking at lots of different candidate moves. That's good as well. So knight d5 was played. E4, knight d2. Yeah, not a nice position for black. Something's gone wrong. So really, it really revolves around... Yeah, it's already dead loss for black, I would say. I think it revolves around making the important decisions early on. You know, how do you, yeah, this is I wouldn't even, to be honest, I wouldn't even give... I just say that white's winning, move on to the next game. There's no point even giving annotations after this. He doesn't give many annotations, but I wouldn't even bother, because it's very obvious that white is winning. So how accurate was that game? Does the computer come up with any... I think, basically handling the opening, knowing the opening. So people say don't study the opening, but the opening is clearly so important in chess. Because if black had known that opening a little bit better... So I think Arjun, we're already seeing that he's quite a good player, but his openings... So the first game, his opening was very good, but obviously he's white. Second game, opening nowhere near as good. So his openings are a little bit patchy, a little bit up and down. Now, he was white. His opponent, who was called... I think that's a female player. Younger player as well. Played very well in this game. Arjun was black. He didn't play terrible. He played 89% accuracy. So what was his mistakes? So that was my annotation. Yeah, D takes C4. It actually gives a line. So he's added a line. So he's given this line, and it says it's very unclear, right? But E6 is just not fighting for the initiative. So basically black just handles the opening slightly too passively. Not fatal by this point yet, but obviously you put yourself under pressure, you know, by making these slight mistakes. And they said D4. The computer, I should say, said D4. Arjun mentioned. So it's good that he's instinctively understanding that this might be the best try. So he said this looks horrible for black. Yeah, but the computer does agree with me that this is already busted. However, after knight e4, there's better defences. After queen c7, knight e6, you can play this move. Wow. Yeah, this is the best try. Obviously not a great position, but you go out the exchange, because the computer understands that this position is lost. So you can't play this position. So sometimes it's all about, you know, understanding. So played against Maxim. That's a player that I'm familiar with vaguely. That name rings a bell. I may have even played him and drawn with him. It's quite a good... Is that a younger player as well, maybe? Is that the one with the blonde hair, right? Whose mum helps to run the bookstore? With Howard Wood. So... maybe I'm getting confused. There's a few Ukrainians who are kind of... or like ex-Ukrainians who are basically... Camilla's another one. So this game, okay, let's get rid of the engine. Yeah, so now we get this typical isolated queen's pawn position. A little bit like what Gukesh had against Nakamura, or Gukesh was black in that game. In the final, the candidate's got this isolated D pawn. Basically, these kind of positions, you either get some sort of attacking chances for white, or black is able to neutralise it very effectively. Yes, I think in this position it's all about identify. Again, you see that his openings aren't quite on the level that you would expect because Queen D2 is probably not a great move. Because the idea is you need maybe like you understand that Black wants to exchange pieces in the isolated pawn positions. So Queen D2 doesn't really fit with your plan. So one plan for White can be sometimes get A3 and then put the Queen on D3. The Bishop will drop back to A2 with a view later on. Probably the Rook will go to D1. Later on, I'll go in Bishop B1 and then attacking on the King's side. So that would have possibly been superior. Queen D2, I would actually give that a slightly dubious, or not, certainly not the best move. It's probably not a mistake, but ideal setup. But is it an ideal setup after Knight D5? Yeah, but he actually mentions the reason what's wrong with it. In isolated Queen's pawn positions, you should avoid exchange. Exactly. Also, Black is left with his bad bishop. I don't agree. I don't think that is a bad bishop. Once the bishop, if the bishop gets to B7, it's not a bad bishop. So I think already I would say that Black is maybe slightly better here because I don't know what he could have done. This is the problem. You already maybe you have to go Bishop E3 just to avoid the exchange. Also, this was Bishop D5 was actually possible because if you do this and then take, and now I have a reasonable set of minor pieces. I've still got my isolated pawn, but you've also now got an isolated pawn. So this position should be equal. But I'm avoiding being worse. Maybe H4 was also an option, but that looks a bit risky. This is still theory, but yeah, Knight D5 is also playable. Right. Take, presumably go Bishop B5 or something. Or Bishop B7. Yeah, so I don't think that White played the opening that great, but not terrible. But I think after Bishop E7 already I would say that I would evaluate it as maybe, not, probably the computer would say it's equal, but I think this is where you could say from a human perspective it's very difficult. What's the engine saying? It's kind of, yeah, it's equal. Because White is still very active in the centre. So Rook at E1. I think from a human perspective, it's probably better for Black because strategically you're better because in the long run, this pawn is a weakness. The more pieces that get exchanged, the more that becomes an issue. In any endgame, it's going to be a big issue. So Knight E5 looks like a good move. Be routing the bishop to better diagonal. Again, don't need to. It's kind of stating the obvious. Maybe too much chessable. You know, the chessable they always state the obvious, don't they? But obviously, a lot of the players who use chessable are like amateur players, so it's like you need to kind of, you know. But I think just give variations. You know, like why have you played that move? What's the Black's best response? You know, I would say also saves your energy if you're not having to put in all these like annotations. Knight F6, Rook D1. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I mean that's. Yeah, that's an interesting move, but I mean, he shows some kind of, you know, coolness just to go Rook D1 there when you've already moved the Rook there. Maybe I would have contemplated maybe a more aggressive move like Rook E3. Because at the moment this pawn isn't being attacked, and then potentially Rook can go to G3, attack the Black King. I don't know what would happen then. Rook D1 looks a little bit suspicious to me. And now I don't like Knight E2 either. I must admit. I don't like Knight E2. That feels wrong. Why not just Rook E1 and just develop a piece into the game? Because I feel like Knight E2, what does that do? That's not really... You're not really attacking here, are you? Like, even a move like Queen E2, or Queen D6, what he plays, because he wants to go to B4. And now I would go A3 to stop Queen B4, possibly. So after Knight G3, I suppose Queen B4 you have, maybe you have Queen G4. What do you do after Queen B4, for example? As White. Maybe the idea is to go Queen D3, but then Knight F4. If Queen G5, can we just get away with taking? And I don't see a great attack for White here. Knight H5, I can just take it off. And then maybe I can get away with this, but I don't really think this is enough. Moves like H6 or even G6 or Knight F6. Even F5 is an option. Because if I exchange queens here as black, I'm already doing very well. So 97 I think was unnecessary, but not terrible. So coming back, slightly weird play, yeah. Yeah, so try to exchange a pair of knights. So it's not really got an attack at all, you see. This is the problem. So already I would say that black is definitely better here. So I would say already maybe slightly better or clearly better. Maybe clearly better, because you just got a passive position with no attacking chances, and your king is, you know, maybe on a higher level we'd even say winning, right? Why bother with knight d5? Why not just bring the rook to d8? Knight's well placed on f4. Why bother to move it? Maybe Black was worried about not queen e3 because it hangs mate, but maybe queen d2 and g3 was concerning. Okay, knight d5 was played. But it's just very hard to do anything here. Like, you know, as white, like the best player in the world is not going to be able to do much with white's position because it's just passive. So it's very important in these isolated queen pawn positions to get it right. Because if you get it wrong like this, you just, yeah, rook c1, you stop recording, but obviously this is better. Maybe this is winning by force, right? You stop recording, but this already looks very, very bad. Maybe there's queen f1 or something. Anyway, stop recording. How accurate was that game? Let's have a look. Let's have another look. So we're going through a lot of his games in this tournament. Getting Grandmaster analysis. That's £50 you owe me. No, I'm only kidding. Well, these days, to be honest, you don't need, because these engines are so strong, you don't need engines. This is a part of the problem when I do coaching a lot. People annotate their games with engines. I say, well, don't. I'd prefer if you didn't, because how am I giving input if you already know what the best move is on every turn, right? You know, like how can I outthink an engine? I can't. Actually, very accurate game by Black, very impressive game by Black. White played a decent game, but it's probably like small margins, right? That's probably what they get. Yeah, so I said queen d2 was probably dubious. That's wrong, I think. It's not dubious, but I think from practical level it's not the best. So a3 is, we already mentioned that's possible. And then bishop d3, knight f6, rook d1. What's the engine saying? Yeah, I didn't like rook d1. That's what I said, I think. What was... So my rook e3 was actually top move. I'm quite happy about that. But it does look more natural, right? You're doing something. You know, I hate positions when you're not doing anything. You know, when you go rook d1, it doesn't do anything. You know, rook e3 is playing with a purpose. Whereas rook d1 is not playing with a purpose, really. It's just like a nothing move. Your rook is already developed. Why bother to move it? So, yeah, I think positions like games like this, one of these games where it just slowly slips away. And I said rook e1 was better. Computer agrees. So I'm basically an engine. Thanks, guys. And I said maybe a3, and after knight g3, yeah, the best move is queen b4, exactly. You should try and trade queens. Knight e7 was also good, though. Just as good, if not better. So, it was around about here I started to think that black was clearly better, but actually the engine only gives it a slightly better. But clearly a difficult position to play for white, because you've got no play, and you're never going to win the game. And it slowly slipped away. Okay, so let's move on to the next game against Tom Day. This game, Arjun won, so that's good. G6. I think F3 is a good move here, actually, because that really set up to meet the Grunfeld as well. So after F3, for example, D5 you can take, and then play E4. But knight C3, obviously that's the main line. And then he went F3 anyway. Yeah, okay, so he's ready for that. Yeah, I think D5 is also playable, right? I mean, knight E2, yeah, D5 is always played here, interestingly enough. I mean, this actually feels like a slightly weird setup, because you're playing the same-ish, but you're playing with a bishop on D3. Yeah, because I would have played bishop e3 here, or maybe knight e2 is also not. I have also played bishop g5 in the past. To be honest, I don't have a great score with this line as white because I just find that black will always get some kind of play. There's a game I lost to Mark Hebden in Daventry. Funny enough, that's where I'm going later. And I was on 6 out of 6 in a 4NCO weekender. Going back about 2 or 3 years ago. And I played Mark in the last round. He was on 5 out of 6. He beat me, so he tied the tournament. But I played that bishop g5 line. And actually I had a winning position, or almost winning position at one point at the opening, but then I started playing it really badly. And he deservedly won the game. But this, yeah, black is always getting this kind of play, right? Oh, but Arjun is black in this game, right? So we can't really criticise his choice of bishop d3 because that wasn't his choice. So maybe we should flip the board and see it from his perspective. F4. Yeah, this already looks very comfortable for black. I'm not sure I'd go f4 there. I'd be tempted to go bishop c2, but black is clearly very active. This is quite a good... Also after b4, this pawn is starting to look weak. Where do you even move the knight? So, not a good position for white at all. This has already gone very wrong. Maybe e6 is possible here. I might be just tempted just to blow. White is so underdeveloped. I'd be tempted to go here and try and blow the position open. But rook a8 is obviously a good move, yeah. So I'd give that an exclamation mark. How do we? Maybe e6 I would give as interesting. But clearly, if you could just win a pawn, then that's a better move. So I would give that. You know, give your personality to your moves. Rook a5. Yeah, it's already winning. So here I would annotate it. I would give it as winning. At this point, I'd say black is winning. You almost don't need to give any annotations after this because the position is just so clearly winning. H5. So decent. He could obviously play well, but I feel like his knowledge is a little bit sketchy, a little bit variable. Like a lot of players, you know, certain positions he can obviously play it to a very high level, like GM level easily, but other positions he's not playing anywhere near the same level. And that comes down to lack of knowledge, lack of experience. Yeah, because this is clearly a very good game by black. So certain openings he obviously knows very well, like King's Indians one, we saw in the first game, he played that very well. Let's have a look at the... in terms of describing his style, I would say that he's better with the initiative. When he's having on the back foot, he's not as strong. That's true of a lot of players, right? So when he's got the initiative, when he's got the advantage, I think he's a very strong player from what I can tell of his games. He's got a kind of an all-round style, right? There's not any massive weaknesses in his play. It's good positionally, it's good tactically. But yeah, very yeah, as I would expect, very accurate game by black. 95% as GM level, I would say, easily. Yeah, but it's probably white just made it too easy for black. Yeah, that was actually a terrible move. Having gone a5, you should obviously take, and then you got this structure against this guy and this guy. So black is obviously okay here because this board is actually a little bit, you know, it's defended by the bishop, so that's good news for white. But on the other hand, it is, you have to guard it for quite a long time period of game, so black will always have pressure against that pawn. But yeah, objectively it's given some line with rook a3. The engine sees everything, right? But it says something like this is better for, well, no, it's probably about equal, right? What's the engine saying? Yeah, it's slightly better for white even, yeah. But CB5 was a shocker because that basically just gives the game away. And then B4, that's what I said. It's almost no point annotating it. What did it say about my E6 move? That's not as good as rook A8. It's still better, but it's, yeah. Okay, so let's move on to the final game. So he managed to do all the games from his tournament, which is good. So again, he plays this panel Botvinnik, which he seems to love. Botvinnik, I was reading about Botvinnik actually, it's interesting. One of the guys who got him into the Soviet side of chess was a guy who ended up. He was actually a Soviet prosecutor who worked for Stalin. I can't remember the guy's name, but he was also running the Soviet chess program. So they made a kind of, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here, but they made a kind of an effort to, obviously, to make Soviet chess. That's why Russia was so far ahead, because it really was like a government-run initiative. And but he worked for Stalin as a prosecutor. But when he got less involved in the prosecution side, and they felt that he was neglecting that because of chess involvement, and then they ended up sacking him. And then of course, like, Stalin was paranoid, so he ended up getting executed himself. So I shouldn't laugh, really. It's all pretty morbid. Anyway, that's a little bit of history. Botvinnik was Jewish, by the way. Actually, a lot of world champions were Jewish. For example, the first world champion, Steinitz, was Jewish. He was born, I believe, in Vienna or Prague. Was it? Maybe it was Prague. It was either Prague or Vienna. I think he was born in Prague. Actually, he was born in Czech Republic, maybe. Steinitz. He's either Austrian or Czech Republic, but he ended up dying in New York, I think. And the same thing happened with Lasker. Lasker was Jewish. He was a German Jew. Ended up dying in New York. He was friends with Einstein, but Einstein regarded chess as being obviously another famous Jewish personality who ended up dying in America as well. He worked at Princeton University because he was also made more famous recently, already very famous, by this film Oppenheimer, which is played by Tom Conti. Actually, there's a Comte there as well, like Conti, would be a continuation of it. And so I've gone off on one of my random tangents. Obviously, c5, excellent move actually. Yeah, I remember this game, Kasparov and Kasparov annotate this game in New in Chess. We'll have a look at that game quickly. Let's view that game. We'll come back to this. Because Kasparov gave this Rook C1 move a double exclam from my memory. Because he basically said that you want to go C4, but there's some prophylactic reason why Rook C1. I think Black wants to go B6. But then White goes C4. There's some prophylactic reason. Because you're defending here, you maintain the edge. But, yeah, so again, knowledge of openings. So his knowledge of openings is pretty good in his Botvinnik. Of the opening is pretty good. What other chess players we go for the world champions, going off on a tangent again. So we went Botvinnik, Lasker. Capablanca was Cuban diplomat. Worked for the diplomatic service, Cuba. Alekhine was like Russian, but he ended up becoming sort of like fascist tendencies. He died in Estoril in Portugal, in a hotel room in a casino, and he was like an alcoholic. He had like a bottle of whiskey or something by his bed. And then it was Botvinnik who became world champion after that, 1948. Then it was Smyslov. Then it went back to Botvinnik. Then it was Tao, who was from Latvia. I think he might have been Jewish as well, Tao, I'm not sure. And then after Tao, it went back to Botvinnik. Then Botvinnik went to Petrosian, who was Armenian. He died in 1984 of cancer. Not sure what type of cancer. It was stomach cancer, maybe. And something like August 1984 he died, I think. And then after Petrosian, the world champion was Spassky, would have been 69-72. Spassky was born in St. Petersburg. Or from Leningrad, as it was called then, I think. Leningrad. He ended up emigrating to France later. Then it was Bobby Fischer, who was born in 1943 in Brooklyn. Died in Iceland of liver failure. He was partly Jewish, but he became anti-Semitic. And then it was after Bobby Fischer, it was Karpov, who was Russian Orthodox. He was born something like, when was Karpov born? Maybe 1950s, right? So Karpov became world champion in 1975. He lost the title to Garry Kasparov, who was half Jewish, in 1985. So Kasparov was half Armenian, half Azerbaijani. His mother was called Clara Kasparova. His dad was actually called Weinstein. So Gary was originally born as Garrick Weinstein. But because the Soviet at that time there's still a lot of anti-Semitism, they recommended that it was a good idea for him to change his name to his mother's maiden name after his dad died. His dad died quite young, so I think his dad was Armenian, or his mum was Armenian, possibly. His dad was Azerbaijani, and actually it made more sense if his dad was Armenian, because you get more Armenians, I believe, in Armenia, whereas in Azerbaijan. So he was born in Baku. Azerbaijan is more like a Muslim population, and actually Armenians and Azerbaijan have a very rocky history. There was a genocide in Armenia at some point. I think they partly blame it on the Azerbaijanis. There was a lot of sort of like problems with Azerbaijanis and Armenians. And then after Garry Kasparov, the world champion would have been Vladimir Kramnik, who's Russian Orthodox. I believe he was born in Siberia. Then it would have been Vishy Anand, who's Indian. And then possibly Topalov was also around about that period, but he was like FIDE world champion, right? Bulgarian, right? Catholic, maybe. And then later on you would have had... Who came world champion? We're doing like a quiz now, aren't we? Like, who became world champion after... It was obviously Carlsen after Anand, right? So it's Magnus Carlsen, who's like non-religious, I would say. And his religion is money. And he's Norwegian, but brilliant chess player. Anyway. And then obviously then it's Ding Liren, who's Chinese. Does China have a religion, right? No, they don't really, do they? Because they're communists, right? Communists don't really have religion. So in the Soviet Union, possibly the church was persecuted as well at some point, or some sections of the church. I don't know. By the communists, because communism is sort of like anti-religion, right? To some degree. B4, 5. Yeah, this looks good for white. So again, lot of text, which I would cut down on the text and have more annotations. Yeah, this looks like a good game by white. You're controlling the break. The only difficulty is breaking through here. It looks like better for white. Not 100%, but it definitely looks better for white. As black here, I'll be trying to open up position anyway. Like, he does eventually go e5, yeah. Oh, he ended up losing this game. Yeah, because the guy is playing like... Yeah, not an easy position to control. I mean, you could maybe consider move the knight, you drop f here, but this is also hanging. So, but yeah, you probably don't want to drop this so quickly, right? I'm not sure I would have gone g3 actually, because that weakens the light squares around your king. Or maybe it could, if you could get away with it, I'll try to play some other kind of move. I don't know what move though, that's the problem, because black will break up with e5 given the opportunity. So maybe this position, what is the engine saying? Yeah, it says better moves like maybe rook b. It's a tricky position to play really. Like, yeah, queen f3, that was a move that I thought about. So I think this is probably not going to work, right? It doesn't really work because you got like a very nice idea here, which you just take and then you go rook e1 and then the position is falling apart for black, like b5, yeah. So g3. Yeah, maybe knight e4 I would consider there. Let's quickly end this game, so I need to go to the toilet as well. More importantly. Okay, let's just get to the end. Right, bishop d5, yeah, it's gone wrong. So how accurate was the game? I shouldn't drink milk. You know, milk's got a bad thing. But yeah, I'm liking his games in general, Arjun. So thanks for sending me your games. Thanks for being, you know, putting yourself on the chopping block in terms of. So possibly I would say his level dropped in this game because 5 games in a short pack. period of time, yeah, it's probably his worst game of the whole lot, I would say. 5 games in a short period of time is a lot of games, and he played at quite a high level for some of those games. So it's tough, you know, and yeah, we see that his level dropped. But anyway, yeah, so basically, thanks for watching that video. Please send me your games. I'll put my email address down below. Cheers.